The Charlotte Hornets had the weirdest season ever a year ago. Everyone was picking them to not be a playoff team. I had them at like the 5th seed or something, and they were winning for a beginning of the season, so I was thinking, oh nice, I can get an ego trip and Charlotte can make me look good. And I mean, yeah, they're not maybe the sexiest team in the world when you think about like national spotlight or whatever, but Steve Clifford's a good coach. Kemba Walker is one of the more underrated offensive players in the league. Michael Jordan's finally figured it out as an owner, and they just kind of had a good thing going. I would say the only other offense they have besides Kemba is Nicholas Batum being a pretty decent playmaker for a wing dude, although he loves to take fadeaway jumpers that I think everyone realizes are not going to go in except for him. There's apparently my favorite player in the NBA, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, all defense, some uncomfortable looking offense. But Cody Zeller is really the theme of this video here. Once he got injured, they were terrible last season. I think Cody Zeller was like the low-key MVP of this previous year because the dude, what was it? They were like 3-17 when he was not playing. And when he was in the game, their plus-minus was very good. And I'm just saying, maybe Cody Zeller was actually the MVP of the NBA. Shout out to Marvin Williams, who's still hanging on as a small ball 4 and all that good stuff. But basically, once Cody Zeller went down, they had no other options. Their center position fell off drastically. They were not able to maintain their defense, and they missed the athleticism that Zeller gives them on both sides of the floor. So with the recent acquisition of Dwight Howard, who's not going to show up in this video for like another minute because this is the most professional video on YouTube, we're going to talk about if their improved center rotation can mean that the Charlotte Hornets are just going to be a better team overall. But before we get to Dwight Howard, I have to talk crap on some of Cody Zeller's replacements after we get one more clip of Cody Zeller catching an alley-oop over Rudy Gobert, which probably doesn't happen in real life. There was one, Frank the Tank Kaminsky. It's one of my favorite rhymes in the NBA. As far as the player is concerned, I don't really care for the dude too much. I think his physicality needs to improve, and he really hasn't shown a lot offensively. And then there's Miles Plumlee, who had a decent year in Phoenix in his second season in the league, and since then he hasn't been that good. He's also one of the worst contracts in the NBA as well. These were their options for their centers when Cody Zeller was out. So it's understandable that there was a drop-off, but even then, I mean, their record is really, really bad when Cody Zeller is not playing. So we're finally going to get to Dwight Howard here. 3 minutes into the video, this is exactly how you do it. Can Dwight Howard just make these guys a better team who can allow them to have no real drop-off depending on which big man is playing? Well, let's talk about Dwight first. I think he's still a pretty decent big man. Your expectations of what he's going to do for you have to drop a little bit compared to seasons past, but he's still a physical dude. He finishes well around the rim. He can catch an alley-oop. He can roll to the basket pretty well. I would say he's still more athletic and more fleet of foot, I hope I used that term correctly, than a decent amount of NBA centers, which means he can be effective in transition. And defensively, he's cool. Good rebounder, all that stuff. I like Dwight as a player still. You could argue that he's overpaid, but I think he could fit in well to what Charlotte does. I could picture him setting a lot of screens in Steve Clifford's offense, and I actually think Dwight will end up starting for these guys. Even if you could make the argument that Cody Zeller is actually a more effective player than Dwight Howard at this point, just because he's a better defender than Dwight, I think Dwight would start, 1, because of the salary, 2, because he can be kind of a crybaby sometimes, and we're going to talk about that crybabiness right now. If this dude thinks that he's still this guy who you dump the ball off to in the post, he's just got to not do that anymore. I mean, in this clip, he's switched on to Marco Bellinelli. That makes sense for a post-up, but Dwight Howard just needs to stop thinking as highly of himself as he does, which is kind of like a little brutally honest to say, but it's the reality at this point. But we can talk about Cody Zeller. I think he would probably be totally fine as a backup. I think these two could play, I don't know, 24, 25 minutes a game apiece. which I think Zeller would be totally cool with. The question is just, is Dwight Howard going to be content with it? But if Dwight Howard's on board, then I mean, is that not the best center rotation in the NBA? I mean, I'm not really thinking about it, but I can't think of another team who has just two really solid big dudes. We can also talk about Marvin Williams again. He's a really good power forward to have next to an effective center because he stretches the floor well. The past, 3 or 4 seasons, he's been a good three-point shooter at the power forward position. And another reason why they need both of these guys, if I can bounce this back to Kemba Walker for a moment, is Kemba has a pretty high responsibility with these guys as an offensive player. And getting buckets in transition can always just be a way to make you a better offensive team, especially when you don't have that many actual creators and scorers. So if you have Cody Zeller and Dwight Howard on the floor at all times, we would assume that Charlotte's defense can at least be decent and not drop off the moment Zeller's not in the game, which means more missed baskets for the other team, which can then lead to more transition opportunities for your team. So I think Dwight Howard can definitely have a positive impact with the Charlotte Hornets, given his abilities that he still has as a rebounder, physical guy, still decently athletic, pretty cool on defense. He just has to not go on an ego trip, which hopefully he just doesn't do. I'm also going to use the last portion of this video to mention Malik Monk, because if I don't mention the rookie, then someone in the comments is going to go, "You didn't even mention Malik Monk." And then my reply to that would be, he's not going to play that much, what does it matter? But now that it's here, I don't have to do that, so there you go.